So, and now you're working with executives too. You talk a lot on your website and on your LinkedIn profile. You talk a lot about employee engagement and helping to bridge that gap between employer and employee and making sure that they're all culturally fit and everything like that. Where did those gaps come from? Have they always been there, or was there some epicenter that kind of started this? Where did that breakdown happen?
That's a great question. And I want to sort of reiterate what you just said, because I think this is one of the things that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, which is that the problem doesn't lie with the leader or with the employee. The problem lies with the relationship that exists between the leader and the employees and what that consists of in terms of communication and trust and, all of the buzzwords we say, but they're real. Yeah. And so I think that gap has always been there to a degree. However, I do think in the last several years, what we're starting to see is two things. One, there's a generational shift that's happening, right? So folks that are roughly my age and in my little micro generation of Zennials, we are now the VPs, the directors, and those that are younger than us and in the workforce have a certain expectation. Those that were older than us have perhaps a different expectation of what that relationship looks like. And so I find it kind of interesting because I do think there's something about this micro generation, these folks, I'll just out myself, my age, but that are like, born in the early 80s that had this analog childhood, who grew up with the generation before us, but also have this digital adulthood, and we can relate to, the younger generation growing up with phones and everything. And so I think we're seeing sort of this, I wouldn't even call it a clash or a collision, but there's these different generations who had the most different experiences of any generational gap that you've seen, yeah. Right? And so, I always talk about my daughter's almost 16. My daughter has a very different set of expectations going into the work world in a few years than I did, for sure. Very autonomous, very self-guided, and we have to be ready for that. Yeah. And so that's where I think the gap started and is maybe bigger than it has been in the past. And then the pandemic sort of accelerated that because you also have folks who are just reevaluating life and priorities and are no longer willing to accept anything less than a full, vibrant life. Because, man, we all face mortality for 2 years.